People always assume that working in a covert government agency means constant danger, exotic locations, and tuxedos with hidden weapons. In reality, it's more like living in an endless group chat where everyone's trying to cover their own screw-ups in real time. Glorious. After 3 straight months of surveillance, dead drops, and pretending to be interested in cryptocurrency fraud, I was done. Burnout. Cooked. If I saw one more spreadsheet labeled classified, I was going to fake my own death and open a food truck in Belize. So I took a break. Well, tried to. I remembered a little something tucked away in the back of my mind. And my will, a lake cabin. A dusty inheritance from my late uncle, complete with questionable plumbing and zero cell service. I hadn't set foot there in years. Honestly, I wasn't even sure it still had a roof. But it was far. It was quiet. And most importantly, it was untraceable. I called up 2 of my colleagues, Mark and Dave, guys I could trust to not ask too many questions and, more importantly, not burn the place down. We packed our gear, tossed in a grill, grabbed enough meat to supply a small militia, and hit the road. The mood was perfect. Windows down, music up, and that rare feeling like no one was watching you through a traffic cam. This is going to be legendary, Dave grinned, stuffing beef jerky into his face like he was afraid we'd hit a vegan checkpoint. It's going to be quiet, I said. Legendary would be too much like work. A few hours later, we pulled onto the gravel path leading to the cabin. Trees arched over the trail, the air got thicker, and the hum of civilization disappeared behind us like a dropped call. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in months. Then we parked. At first glance, everything looked the same. Cabin still standing. Deck still leaning at a questionable angle. Nature still doing its thing. But then I noticed it. On the porch railing, 2 plastic cups. Not just any cups. Branded, floral printed, over-the-top artisan cafe cups. The kind that come with foam art and a lecture about fair trade beans. The kind that cost more than my first burner phone. Next to them, a rolled-up yoga mat and an empty bottle of cucumber-infused sparkling water. Dave raised an eyebrow. You sure no one else has been here? I mean, unless raccoons have developed a taste for $7 lattes. Mark leaned down, squinting at a napkin with what looked like lipstick. Or started doing hot yoga. I let out a dry chuckle, forcing the rising irritation down. Fantastic. Squatters with expensive taste. Probably armed with matcha. We did a quick sweep, old habit. Nothing too serious. Just a bit of cleanup. A few tossed napkins here, a paper plate there. Whoever had been here hadn't stayed long. Or at least hadn't expected company. Still, the nerve of it. But whatever. We didn't drive all this way to argue with someone's leftover brunch habits. We cleared the porch, fired up the grill, cracked open a couple of cold ones, and kicked back. Just as the steak hit the grates, and that sweet, sizzling aroma filled the air, snap. A twig cracked somewhere behind us. I turned my head slowly, and there she was, marching out of the woods like she was about to reclaim her birthright. Mid-60s, hair helmeted into a perfect suburban dome, pastel windbreakers zipped to the neck, and a face that screamed, "I'd like to speak to the manager of the forest." "What are you doing here?" she snapped, like we were spray painting swear words on the trees. I held up the tongs, turning the meat slightly. "Barbecuing," I said. "Pretty standard stuff, all things considered." Her eyes narrowed. "This is private property." "Yup," I said. "Mine." Her entire body stiffened like someone had just rebooted her software. "That's impossible," she hissed. "This land has been used by the Silver Pines Lakeside HOA for years. We host events here. Weekly. Events, huh?" I looked around. Didn't know HOA meetings came with almond milk lattes and downward dog. "You need to leave," she barked. I smiled. One of those polite, weaponized smiles you practice in interrogation training. "You're trespassing. But I'm feeling generous today. I'll let it slide if you walk away now." She let out an audible gasp, as if I'd slapped her with a rolled-up bylaws binder. "How dare you?" she muttered, turning beet red. Then, with an angry stomp, so forceful it made the grill rattle slightly, she spun on her heel and stormed back into the woods, muttering something about calling someone. I turned back to the grill, flipping the steak. "Well," I said, "nice to finally get out of the city and enjoy some peace and quiet." The guys laughed, but we all knew. We'd seen that kind of entitlement before, in far more dangerous packages. And people like her? They never stomp off without backup. We thought that was it. A brief, glorious victory. The entitled forest goblin had been banished. We could finally go back to sizzling meat and pretending we weren't trained to dismantle surveillance drones with bottle caps. No such luck. 15 minutes later, just as we were debating whether Dave's ribs were cooked or still a biohazard, we heard movement again. Not one person this time. Two. Karen emerged from the trees with the same righteous stomp as before, except now she was flanked by a man who looked like a high school principal who'd been rudely pulled from his weekend gardening. He had a clipboard. You know you're in for a good time when someone brings a clipboard to a barbecue. Karen looked like she'd just summoned the Avengers. I glanced at Mark. Let me guess. Her manager. The man stepped forward, trying to look official despite the grass stain on his khakis. He gave us a curt nod. Gentlemen, he said, as if we'd just set fire to a national monument. There's been a formal complaint. About the brisket? Dave asked, genuinely concerned. The man didn't laugh. Not even a twitch. I'm with the Zoning and Territorial Use Committee for the county, he continued. I've been informed this land is under dispute. By who? I asked. By me. Ms. Karen Whitaker, Karen snapped, stepping in front of him like he was some sort of bureaucratic attack dog. And this is Silver Pines Lakeside HOA jurisdiction. We've been hosting community events here for years. This land has always been open to us. I gave her a long look. That's a bold interpretation of the word always. The official cleared his throat, clearly regretting every life choice that led him to this moment. If you could provide documentation confirming ownership, he said, we can clear this up quickly. Gladly, I said. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder marked Proof for Nosy People, and handed it to him. Title deed, parcel number, tax records, the full set. He took his time with it, frowning like he was hoping to find a typo he could latch onto and go home with a win. Karen stood beside him, arms folded, wearing a smirk that looked like it had been surgically installed. I sipped my drink and waited. Eventually, the man handed the phone back to me, defeated. Looks legitimate, he muttered. Karen blinked. No, there must be a mistake. We've used this land. It's ours. The HOA. He gave her a look so flat, it could have pressed a panini. Karen, he said quietly, it doesn't matter if the HOA voted to install a water slide and name the squirrels. If it's not in the county records, it's not yours. But the HOA can't override property law, he finished, with the weariness of a man who'd clearly explained this exact concept 600 times in community meetings. Karen stood there, stunned. You could almost hear the Windows error sound in her brain. I turned to the official. Thanks for stopping by. You'll let the HOA know they're trespassing, I assume. He gave a reluctant nod. I'll make a note of it. Perfect, I smiled. Because I've already made a note of her name. And the next time she shows up on my land uninvited, that note becomes a report. Karen snapped her head toward me so fast I thought I heard a vertebra pop. You're threatening me? I shrugged. I'm informing you. Legally. You know, since you guys love rules and all. She opened her mouth, then closed it, reopened it, then let out a frustrated huff, stomped his foot, and spun around again. Another dramatic stomp through the forest. Honestly, if she stomped any harder, we could register her on a seismograph. The official, likely realizing she had no actual authority or backup, turned to us with the look of a man trying to disappear into the earth. Apologies for the misunderstanding, he said. Enjoy your cookout. We will, I said. He left quickly, probably trying to salvage what remained of his weekend. As soon as they were gone, Dave exhaled and looked at me. Do people like that just not hear themselves? She heard herself, I said, turning back to the grill. She just assumed we'd all bow to her clipboard army. Mark laughed. Clipboard army. That's going in the report. We all chuckled, but none of us fully relaxed. Karen wasn't the type to take a loss lying down. She'd be back. But for now, we returned to our beer, our food, and the occasional impersonation of HOA bylaws enforcement officers. Peace, for the moment. Just meat, friends, and only minor trespassing threats. The following weekend, We came back. Against our better judgment. Not because we'd forgotten Karen, but because we were hoping she had finally taken her rage-stomping back to whatever cul-de-sac HOA bunker she slithered out of. We were wrong. We hadn't even made it past the front gate when we saw them. Big, bold, and deeply illegal. Private property, HOA use only. Trespassers will be prosecuted to the full extent of the HOA code. You are being watched. Yes, the classic trifecta of passive aggression, legal nonsense, and psychological warfare, all laminated in Comic Sans, probably. Dave stopped the car and leaned out the window. Tell me those are a joke. I wish I could, I said, already feeling my weekend buzz evaporate. Looks like the raccoons learned how to use a label maker. We got out and inspected the signs up close. Metal stakes, zip-tied plastic, and what looked like the faint smell of peppermint hand lotion. The Karen aura was strong here. Mark muttered. This is giving off real cult energy. Yep, I said, pulling the signs out of the ground one by one. The Church of Eternal HOA. We cleared the nonsense, tossed it in a garbage bag, and tried to settle into the weekend. Again, chairs unfolded, firewood stacked, meat marinated. All was well. Until, of course, it wasn't. Because she came back. Right on cue, emerging from the woods like an angry woodland prophet. Same windbreaker. Same sunglasses. But this time, hands planted on hips and an expression that suggested we'd committed treason against the lawn care constitution. This is HOA property now, she declared, like Moses with a parking citation. You need to leave immediately. I blinked. Didn't we do this last week? I could swear we did. She stomped forward like she was about to cast a spell. Silver Pines Lakeside HOA held a vote. A formal vote. Since you haven't actively used this land in years, it was voted back into communal use under HOA authority. I turned to Dave. She's quoting imaginary law again. He nodded. Love that for us. I took a breath, slowly turning back to Karen. Ma'am, I said, you could hold a vote on colonizing Mars for all I care. That doesn't override a legal title. Her nostrils flared. I pulled out my phone and, for what felt like the 100th time, tapped the document open. Still mine, I said, holding it up like a priest offering holy writ. Still not yours. Still binding in the state of. I gestured to the trees, wherever the hell we are. Karen's hands clenched into tiny HOA fists. This land has historical significance to the community. Karen, I found a lipstick napkin and an empty can of LaCroix in the bushes. The only thing this land has hosted lately is a legal brunch. She made a strangled noise. For a moment, I thought she might explode into a swarm of bees. Instead, she did what she did best, stomped. One loud, furious stomp, followed by a dramatic turn and a retreat into the woods, likely to gather her minions or cast her next HOA curse. Maybe both. Seriously, I muttered, turning back to the guys. I'm gonna file a noise complaint on her foot. You think she's done now? Asked Mark. I stared at the tree line. No, she's not finished. She's escalating. Dave sipped his drink and nodded. Should we escalate too? I considered it. Not yet. Maybe she finally gets the message this time. Spoiler alert, she didn't. But for the rest of that weekend, the woods stayed quiet. No more signs. No clipboards. No Karen. And for the briefest, most naive of moments, we actually believed that maybe we had finally reclaimed our peace. Until the third weekend came. And with it, an army. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, by the third weekend, we were emotionally prepared for anything. Alien abduction? Maybe. HOA-sponsored drone strike? Wouldn't be surprised. Karen showing up riding a golf cart chariot pulled by lawyers? Entirely plausible. As we bounced down the gravel path toward the cabin, Mark turned from the passenger's seat and said, All right, bets. What's it going to be this time? A marching band? A billboard declaring this land a sacred HOA monument. Dave leaned forward from the back. Laser tripwires. Definitely tripwires. I smiled, but didn't answer. Because honestly, I had no idea, and that was the worst part. But as we pulled up to the cabin, something was off. No signs. No latte cups. No angry boot prints in the dirt. Everything looked normal. Peaceful even. We unloaded the car, lit the grill, cracked open the beers, and just started to exhale when, you again. We all turned at once. There she was, Karen, in full HOA regalia. And this time, she brought friends. 5 men followed her, all dressed in black tactical pants, matching polos, and caps with shiny embroidered letters. HOA Police. Yes, you read that right. HOA Police. I stared at them for a full 5 seconds, just processing the fact that I was about to be confronted by a bunch of middle-aged suburban mall cops with badges they probably printed on Etsy. Karen planted herself squarely in front of us, hands on hips, ready to smite. This is your final warning, she announced. You are trespassing on HOA property. We will use force if necessary. Behind her, the officers looked around nervously, like they weren't sure if we were criminals or just very tan real estate agents. Dave whispered, "Are we being invaded by a cosplay group?" Mark coughed. "Nope. This is a full HOA militia." I took a deep breath and slowly reached into my pocket. "All right," I muttered. She asked for it. I pulled out my phone, scrolled down to the name already queued up, and hit call. "Phase 1, I said into the speaker. "Begin." Karen blinked. "Excuse me." I gave her a small, patient smile. "Just stay right there. You'll love this part." And then, like angels descending from heaven in unmarked vehicles, 3 blacked-out vans roared down the road and screeched to a halt behind us. Doors flew open. Out stepped 6 federal agents in tactical gear and 1 man in a crisp, dark blue suit. He adjusted his tie as he walked toward Karen with the kind of calm that says I ruin people like you before lunch. He flashed a badge. "Agent Cross," he said. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Economic Crimes Division." Karen made a sound that could only be described as a reverse gasp. "You," he continued, "are under investigation for suspected embezzlement, unauthorized use of private property, and fraudulent misrepresentation under HOA jurisdiction." "What?" Karen squeaked. "Don't worry," I said. "They've been watching you for a while. You kind of made it easy." 2 agents moved in, each taking one of her arms. She tried to pull away, but they handled her like a mildly angry bag of groceries. Wait. I'm the HOA president. You can't." "We can't," Agent Cross said calmly. "And we are." They hauled her off like a wriggling toddler mid-tantrum. Her designer sunglasses fell to the ground as she was loaded into the van, still screaming. "I have rights. I run the Silver Pines HOA. You'll hear from my board." The door slammed shut. The van drove off. Silence. The fake HOA officers she brought with her looked like they'd just realized they were on the wrong episode of a reality show. One of them started admiring the bark on a nearby tree. Another studied his shoelaces like they held the secrets of the universe. I turned toward them. "And what about you gentlemen?" I asked, casually sipping my drink. "Crickets. Because right now, you're illegally on private property in uniforms that suggest impersonation of law enforcement. That's a felony in some states." One of them whispered, "Nope," and bolted. The rest followed, tripping over each other in their desperate attempt to flee. One even left his clipboard behind. A tragic casualty of war. Agent Cross turned to me. "Appreciate the tip," he said. "She's been on our radar for a while, but we needed her to make one last move. You gave her the rope." "I figured if anyone could hang themselves with HOA bureaucracy," I said, "it'd be Karen." He nodded. "You're clear to enjoy the rest of your weekend. If she has friends still lurking, we'll be in touch." I gave a mock salute. "Appreciate it." The vans disappeared into the trees just as fast as they'd come. A distant echo of Karen's voice, "You'll regret this," faded into birdsong. Silence returned. Real silence, not the kind that comes before another Karen ambush. We stood there for a moment, still holding our drinks, watching the dust settle where the vans had vanished. Finally, Dave broke the silence. "Dude," he said, turning to me with wide eyes. "If someone had recorded this story and posted it on YouTube, it would have gotten millions of views and a lot of comments and likes. It would have gone viral in about an hour." Mark nodded, already pulling out his phone. Titles write themselves. HOA president gets FBI'd at backyard barbecue. Or, wait, Karen tries to arrest property owner, regrets everything. Boom. 10 million views. Easy. I chuckled, lifting my can. Too bad national security clearance doesn't allow merch drops. Dave raised his can. To Operation Karen. We toasted. For once, no one interrupted us. A few weekends passed. We skipped coming back for a bit, not out of fear, but because honestly, after pulling off a sting operation in gym shorts, we figured we'd earn some couch time. But eventually, the itch returned. The lake, the trees, the grill, all of it was calling. And more importantly, no one had called to say we were banned, arrested, or summoned before the Great Council of Silver Pines. So we loaded up the truck again and drove back. And this time, everything was calm. No signs. No latte cups. No clipboard armies hidden in the woods. The air was clean, the firewood dry, and the only sound was birds and the soft crunch of gravel under our boots. For the first time in a long time, the cabin actually felt like it belonged to us again. We were halfway through unpacking when we saw someone approaching on foot. We froze, instinct. But it wasn't Karen. This guy was maybe mid-40s, khakis, a well-worn baseball cap, and a six-pack of local craft beer in each hand. No clipboard, no security cosplay. Just a man walking with the body language of someone both apologetic and slightly embarrassed. He stopped a few feet from us, raised a hand in greeting, and said, "Hey there. Sorry to drop in." I squinted. "You're not about to declare this sacred HOA ground, are you?" He laughed, an actual laugh, not the dry Karen snort of disdain. "God, no. I'm the new president of Silver Pines Lakeside HOA. Took over after, he paused, looking for a polite way to say after Karen got tackled by the feds at a cookout. After recent events, he settled on. Congratulations on your promotion, I said dryly. Thanks. I didn't exactly campaign for it. More like I showed up to a meeting and was the only one who didn't hide under the table. He extended one of the six-packs toward us. I wanted to stop by, say thank you for, well, everything. And also apologize for what you went through. That's not what we're about. Or at least, it's not what we want to be about anymore. Mark took the beer and nodded. So you're not going to vote us off the island? He chuckled again. Promise. In fact, we're doing a full reset, scrapping the old rules, rewriting the bylaws, banning the phrase community enforcement. Honestly, it's been kind of therapeutic. Dave popped open a can. First rational HOA member I've ever met. You sure you're not undercover? Only thing I'm undercover from is my kids' soccer schedule. We all laughed, and for the first time since this madness started, it felt like maybe, the chapter was actually closing. The new guy gave us a quick wave. If you need anything, just give me a shout. Otherwise, hope you finally get some real peace and quiet. As he disappeared down the path, we all stood in silence for a moment, letting it sink in. Then I raised my can and said, let's call this hazard pay for working overtime on weekends. We toasted again, this time without someone screaming at us from the bushes. We grilled. We relaxed. We even napped. And no one, absolutely no one, tried to claim ownership of the dirt under our chairs. By sundown, we were sitting around the fire, beer in hand, stomachs full, and hearts, well, not exactly sentimental, but calm. And that's a rare thing in our line of work. Dave looked over. So what do we call this operation now? Karen's gone. Clipboard Nation has fallen. Peace is restored. I thought for a second. Operation Sanity, I said. Mark raised his can. Cheers to that. And for once, no surprises. No tactical vans. No shouting. Just stars above us, the crackle of fire, and the sweet, sweet absence of HOA drama. But hey, if they ever try again, I've got the deed, the documents, and Agent Cross on speed dial. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.